Good evening, my friends. Are you here for another spooky story? Then come on in. Come around and settle in by the campfire, for tonight I have quite the tale to tell. Are you ready? Good. Then let us begin. The open road can be full of perils and pitfalls. Even to the most experienced driver, there are things out there that can chill you to the bone and make you think twice before getting behind the wheel of a vehicle again. Or, in the very least, make you reconsider whom you allow inside of it. So gather round, my friends, and listen well to tonight's true tale. Hazardous Hitchhiker. This one happened to my granny's father, my great-grandfather, many years ago. At the time, they lived in what was basically a very sparsely populated portion of the Appalachians. Towns were few and far between, and even then, most people lived miles away from one another. You could drive for miles and see nothing but hills, woodland, and cattle lingering on the far reaches of farmland. Beautiful country, but if you got into trouble, your fate was pretty much up to how good your luck was and how far your legs could carry you. That is, unless some kind soul happened to come along to help you. And that's what happened in my great-grandfather's case one particular evening. As he was driving off to visit some relatives at the other end of the county, he noticed that, on up in the distance, there was a person walking up the road. Since this was a point along the road where hardly anyone lived, he wondered if, maybe, this person's car had run out of gas. Or, if they didn't have a car, then perhaps they were hitchhiking. After all, this was back when hitchhiking was still a fairly common practice for travelers and was still legal in most states. You know, back before people learned that hitchhiking was an easy way for serial killers to find victims. As he got closer, he noticed the long brown hair and thin build of the figure. Why is a girl out here walking all by herself in the middle of nowhere? He wondered. Having several daughters himself, he felt a twinge of concern for the lone girl. While the area was a pretty safe one, there were still bears and coyotes and other large predators that roamed the area, and there was always that possibility that someone traveling through might not be such a savory character. With that in mind, he spooled his window down and pulled over as he neared the stranger. "Hey there! Do you need a ride?" Normally, my great-grandfather would have addressed the younger folks as son or young lady, but he was quite glad he hadn't in this situation, if the facial hair on the stranger's face as he turned around was anything to go by. Oops. Not a girl then, but a young man, probably in his early to mid-20s. Back in that part of the country, men traditionally kept their hair cut short, so my great-grandfather's mistake could have happened to much of anyone. However, since the words were out of his mouth, he wouldn't take them back. After all, it was a pretty long walk to the nearest town or gas station, and taxis weren't a thing back in that area. Since he'd already offered, he figured he may as well be nice anyway. After all, great-grandfather had quite a few young sons, too. The man was a bit of a scruffy fellow. In addition to the long hair, he had a bit of a beard starting, as if he had just let the stubble go recently. He was incredibly thin, too, and his clothes were faded and a bit dusty. Definitely your typical cross-country hitchhiker from the 1960s. The man looked over my great-grandfather in his truck, thinking about the offer for a moment. Eventually, he gave a slow nod and soon situated himself in the passenger seat. No thank you. No smile. Not even a sigh of relief. It was the strangest thing my great-grandfather had ever seen. And the moment the door shut behind the guy, my great-grandfather knew he had made a huge mistake. The entire drive toward the nearest town, his hair was standing on end. The vibes coming off his passenger were enough that it made my great-grandfather keep his mouth shut nearly the whole trip, behavior mirrored by the guy sitting next to him. There weren't a lot of times in his life that my great-grandfather was scared, but everything in him made him want to claw his way out of his own vehicle and just bolt as fast as he could go into the surrounding countryside. So there the two sat, staring at the road ahead of themselves in silence for about 30 minutes. After a while, that terror that my great-grandfather was feeling was temporarily replaced with curiosity. In his peripherals, he noticed that the young man sitting next to him had a small bag that he was slowly scooting closer toward the window, as if to hide it. Had he always had that? My great-grandfather wondered. He figured that the stranger probably had, and he had just overlooked it in his initial shock. However, he couldn't overlook how nervous the young man seemed to be getting, and that he was fidgeting with the bag ever so subtly, as if to not draw any attention to what he was doing. For whatever reason, it caused alarm bells to sound in great-grandfather's head. Thankfully, the closest town was in sight, and he could see they were nearing a restaurant. By the time they pulled into the parking lot, that ominous feeling was so overwhelming that my great-grandfather barely registered putting the vehicle in park before he bolted out of the truck and into the building. A distant, "Hey, where are you going?" followed him, but he didn't stop to answer. Instead, he wound up having to explain to the little diner's owner and the couple of patrons there that he had shocked with his entrance with what was going on. This meant my great-grandfather had not only embarrassed himself by picking up a man he thought was a woman, got himself scared nearly to death by a stranger, but had also left his vehicle, keys and all, with a spooky passenger still inside. Well, embarrassed as he was far more terrified of going out and confronting the guy, and the others in the restaurant, all people he knew well, didn't quite know what to do either. Instead, my great-grandfather just kinda positioned himself around a corner, near a window where he could see out, but his passenger couldn't see him, and just waited, trying to figure out the next best course of action. Fortunately, my great-grandfather did not get his vehicle stolen that day, because, after waiting without a word from his driver for about 10 minutes, the young man left my great-grandfather's vehicle and wandered on up the road, further into town. The moment he was out of sight, my great-grandfather was out the door and peeling out back onto the road. And while my great-grandfather didn't have anything too bad happen to him that day, he did learn a lesson about picking up hitchhikers. A lesson which no one let him live down for the rest of his life. And there you have it, my friends. I hope you all learned a lesson from this story. There's a reason why hitchhiking is illegal in some states now. And while my great-grandfather didn't wind up the victim of some serial killer, he could have. Then again, from the way Granny told it, I'm not sure my great-grandfather even asked the guy where he wanted to go after he got in. So, I imagine it's possible the two of them could have just sat there, staring out the windshield in silence for 30 minutes, with one as freaked out as the other. So, who's to say whether my great-grandfather's ill sense of foreboding was because he picked up a dangerous person, or because he had nearly terrified someone to pieces with his own terror? Either way, the man always was a good storyteller, so I hope you enjoyed his story, regardless of what the truth was. If you want to make his great-granddaughter and your humble narrator happy, then be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with all of your friends. Don't forget to hit the notification bell too, so you can catch your latest spooky fix the moment it comes out. And if you want to ensure that I can bring you quality scary content more often, then head on over to my Patreon page at patreon.com/phantasmalpoppy. Even pledging a single $1 a month helps me out. Thank you. Good night, and see you all real soon.